Commander Jake Sullivan walked into the medical bay with heavy steps. His hands shook as he held the test results that would change his life forever. The white walls of Earth's main space station felt like they were closing in on him. He had read the report 3 times already, but he still could not believe what it said. Dr. Lisa Martinez Sullivan sat on the medical bed waiting for him. Her dark hair was pulled back in a simple ponytail, and her brown eyes looked tired. She had just returned from a 6-month research mission to the Kepler system. Jake had missed her every single day she was gone. Now he wished she had never come back. "The babies are healthy," Lisa said with a small smile. She placed her hand on her growing belly. "The twins are developing normally according to all the basic tests." Jake looked at the report again. The basic tests showed normal human babies, but the advanced genetic scans told a different story. The cellular structures in the twins did not match anything they had seen before. Energy signatures that came from the babies matched no known life form from Earth. The patterns looked almost like they came from somewhere else entirely. "Lisa, we need to talk about the advanced results," Jake said quietly. He sat down next to her on the medical bed. "There are some things that don't make sense." Before Lisa could answer, the medical bay doors opened. Admiral Carter Brown walked in with 3 other officers. Jake knew this was not a social visit. The Admiral's face was serious and his eyes were cold. Behind him stood Dr. Patricia Wells from the Genetics Department and 2 security guards. "Dr. Martinez Sullivan," Admiral Brown said formally, "we need to discuss your condition and the status of your pregnancy." Lisa looked confused. "My condition? I feel fine. The babies are healthy according to Dr. Morrison's tests." Dr. Wells stepped forward holding a tablet computer. "The standard tests show normal development, yes, but our deep genetic analysis has revealed some concerning anomalies. The cellular structure of your children shows patterns that are not consistent with human DNA." Jake watched his wife's face change from confusion to fear. "What are you saying exactly?" "We believe you may have been exposed to some form of alien contamination during your research mission," Admiral Brown explained. "The energy signatures from your children match readings we detected in the Kepler system. We think something may have altered their genetic structure." Lisa stood up quickly. "That's impossible. I followed all safety protocols during the mission. I was never exposed to any alien materials or organisms." Dr. Wells showed her the test results on the tablet. "The evidence suggests otherwise. Your children's DNA contains sequences that do not exist in any Earth-based life form. We have run the tests multiple times to be sure." Jake felt his world falling apart. He had sworn an oath to protect Earth and humanity. If his own children were some kind of alien hybrid, then what was he supposed to do? His duty as a military officer was clear, but his love for Lisa made everything complicated. "What do you want from us?" Jake asked the Admiral. "Dr. Martinez Sullivan must submit to immediate medical isolation and extensive testing. We need to understand what happened to her and determine if the contamination poses a threat to Earth's population." Lisa backed away from them. "Isolation? For how long?" "Until we can determine the nature of the contamination and find a way to reverse it if possible," Dr. Wells answered. "And if you can't reverse it?" Lisa's voice was barely a whisper. Admiral Brown's expression did not change. "Then you and the children will need to be relocated away from Earth space for the safety of our population." Jake felt like someone had punched him in the stomach. "You're talking about exile. You want to send my wife and children away forever." "We're talking about protecting 4 billion people on Earth and millions more in the colonies," the Admiral replied firmly. "If these children carry some form of alien virus or genetic weapon, then we cannot take the risk." Lisa looked at Jake with tears in her eyes. "You're my husband. Tell them this is wrong. Tell them you won't let them do this to your family." Jake stared at his wife and felt torn in 2 directions. Everything he had been trained to believe told him that Earth's safety came first. His military oath demanded that he put humanity's survival above personal feelings. But Lisa was his wife and these were his children. "The isolation is just temporary," he said finally. "We'll find answers and then you can come home." Lisa's face showed complete shock and betrayal. "You're choosing them over us. You're choosing your career over your family. I'm choosing to protect billions of innocent people, Jake replied, but his voice cracked as he said it. Admiral Brown nodded to the security guards. Dr. Martinez Sullivan, you have 2 hours to pack your personal belongings. A transport ship will take you to the research facility on Station Beta 7. What if I refuse? Lisa asked. Then you will be placed in detention and transported anyway, Dr. Wells answered. This is not a request. Jake reached out to touch Lisa's arm, but she pulled away from him. Don't touch me. You've made your choice very clear. Over the next 2 hours, Jake helped Lisa pack her things in silence. She took her research notes, some clothes, and a few personal items. Everything else would stay behind. Jake tried to explain his decision several times, but Lisa would not listen to him. At the transport bay, Lisa turned to face him one last time. I thought you loved me more than anything else in the universe. I was wrong. I do love you, Jake said desperately. This is just temporary until we figure out what happened. No, it's not, and we both know it, Lisa replied. You're afraid of what I might become. You're afraid of what our children might be. You would rather lose us forever than take the risk of standing up for your family. The transport ship called Wanderer was a small research vessel designed for long-range exploration. It had enough supplies for several months and equipment for basic scientific work. Lisa walked up the boarding ramp without looking back at Jake. Lisa, wait, he called out, but she kept walking. The ship launched 10 minutes later. Jake watched from the observation deck as it disappeared into the darkness of space. He told himself that he had made the right choice. He told himself that Lisa and the children would be safer away from Earth until they understood what was happening. But deep down he knew the truth. He had chosen his duty over his family, and now they were gone forever. The advanced genetic scans had shown something impossible in his children's DNA, but he had been too afraid to question what it really meant. Instead of protecting Lisa, he had abandoned her. 3 days later, Admiral Brown informed him that the transport ship Wanderer had disappeared beyond the outer colonies. All tracking signals had been lost. The official report listed Dr. Lisa Martinez Sullivan and her unborn twins as missing in deep space and presumed dead. Jake knew better. Lisa was brilliant and resourceful. She had survived, and she was out there somewhere raising their children alone. He had forced her to leave, and now she was never coming back. The choice he made in the medical bay would haunt him for the rest of his life. 5 years had passed since Lisa Martinez Sullivan disappeared into the void beyond Earth's colonies. The transport ship Wanderer had become her home and her laboratory as she traveled deeper into unexplored space. She had given birth to Alex and Maya alone in the ship's medical bay, with only the computer to help her through the delivery. The twins were not like other children. At 5 years old, they looked and acted like children who were 8 or 9. Their minds worked faster than any human child should be able to think. They could read and write before they were 3 years old. They solved complex math problems that adults would struggle with. Most surprising of all, they could talk to each other without speaking out loud. Lisa had built a hidden research facility on a rogue planet she named Sanctuary. The planet drifted through space between star systems with no sun to warm it, but deep underground were caves that stayed warm from the planet's core heat. Lisa used mining equipment from the Wanderer to create a comfortable home in the caves. She set up laboratories and workshops where she could continue her research. Alex and Maya helped her with everything. They could control the computer systems with their minds instead of using keyboards or voice commands. When equipment broke down, they seemed to know exactly how to fix it, even though Lisa had never taught them. They could sense things that were wrong with machines before the diagnostic systems detected any problems. Mom, why did Dad send us away? Maya asked one evening as they ate dinner in their underground home. Lisa looked at her daughter's serious face. Maya had Jake's green eyes, but her expression was far more mature than any 5-year-old should have. Your father was scared. The people on Earth thought you and Alex were dangerous because you're different. Are we dangerous? Alex asked. He was working on a quantum computer interface that most adult scientists could not understand. You're powerful, Lisa answered carefully. But power is only dangerous if you use it to hurt people. You would never do that, would you? Both children shook their heads. They understood that their abilities made them special, but they also understood that being different had cost them their father and their home. Lisa spent her days studying the genetic data from her children and comparing it to information she had discovered during her mission to the Kepler system. The truth was becoming clear, and it was more shocking than anyone on Earth could imagine. The strange DNA patterns in Alex and Maya were not alien contamination. They were human DNA, but from humans who had lived millions of years ago. During her research mission, Lisa had found ruins on 3 different planets in the Kepler system. The ruins contained star maps carved into stone and metal artifacts that looked like advanced computer systems. Most important were the biological samples she had secretly collected. DNA from these ancient sites matched the unusual patterns she now saw in her children. The evidence pointed to an impossible conclusion. Humans had not evolved on Earth. They had come from somewhere else in the galaxy long ago. Earth was just one colony world among many that had been settled by an ancient human civilization. Over millions of years, the colonists on Earth had lost their advanced abilities and forgotten their true origins. Lisa realized that her exposure to the quantum fields near the ancient ruins had somehow activated dormant genes in her reproductive system. Alex and Maya represented what humans had been like before they were reduced to their current limited form. They were not alien hybrids. They were humanity returning to its original state. The star maps in the ruins showed travel routes between dozens of worlds. All the routes led back to a central location in the galaxy's core region. The ancient humans had called this place the Nexus. According to the carved records, it was where their civilization had reached its highest point before something terrible happened that forced them to abandon their colonies. Alex walked over to where Lisa was studying the star maps. "I can read this language, Mom. It says the builders went away to hide from the dark ones who eat thoughts and dreams." Lisa stared at her son. She had been trying to translate the ancient writing for months without success. "How can you read it, Alex? I never taught you this language." "I don't know. The words just make sense to me when I look at them," he replied. "Maya can read them too." Maya joined them at the research table. "The builders were our people from a long time ago. They made cities in the stars and traveled between worlds in ships that thought for themselves. But something scary came from far away and started hunting them." "What happened to the builders?" Lisa asked. "They had to become something else to hide from the hunters," Alex explained. "They turned into pure thoughts and went to live in the space between spaces. But first they planted seeds on many worlds so their people could grow back someday." Lisa felt chills run down her spine. Her children were describing the history of an ancient human civilization that had existed millions of years before Earth's recorded history. They were reading it from stone carvings as easily as reading a children's book. Over the following months, Lisa discovered more evidence on other abandoned worlds. Each planet told the same story. An advanced human civilization had spread across the galaxy, but had been forced into hiding by some terrible enemy. The survivors had scattered to primitive colony worlds where they gradually lost their abilities over countless generations. Meanwhile, Jake had been promoted to admiral and now commanded Earth's expansion fleet. He led missions to establish new colonies and protect existing settlements from pirates and hostile alien species that had been encountered in recent years. But he never stopped searching for Lisa and the twins. The official records listed them as lost in deep space, but Jake refused to believe they were dead. He secretly diverted resources to long-range scanning operations, hoping to find some trace of the Wanderer. His fellow officers thought he was wasting time and energy on a hopeless search. "Admiral Sullivan, you need to accept that your family is gone," Admiral Brown told him during a private meeting. "It's been 5 years. Even if they survived the initial journey, they would have run out of supplies long ago." "Lisa is the smartest person I ever met," Jake replied stubbornly. "If anyone could survive out there, it would be her. I'm not giving up until I find proof that they're dead." What Jake did not know was that Lisa had been monitoring Earth's communications from her hidden facility. She watched news broadcasts and intercepted military reports. She knew about Jake's promotion and his continued search for her. Part of her wanted to contact him, but she knew it was too dangerous. Earth's government had not changed their position about genetic contamination. If they discovered that Alex and Maya were even more powerful now than they had been as unborn babies, the response would be extreme. The Earth Defense Council would probably order their immediate destruction rather than risk any kind of alien influence spreading to the general population. Lisa also knew something that Jake did not. Her long-range sensors had detected movement in the deep space beyond the outer colonies. Something large was approaching the solar system from the direction of the galactic core. The energy signatures were similar to readings she had found in the ancient ruins, but much more powerful. "Mom, there are ships coming toward Earth," Maya said one day while working with the sensor arrays. "The people on the ships are angry and hungry. They want to take Earth's people and make them slaves." "How do you know that, sweetie?" Lisa asked. "I can feel their thoughts from here. They think humans are weak and stupid. They think Earth will be easy to conquer." Alex looked up from his work on quantum field generators. "Should we warn Dad?" Lisa considered the question carefully. If hostile aliens were approaching Earth, then Jake and the Defense Forces needed to know. But contacting them would reveal her location and put Alex and Maya at risk. She was torn between protecting her children and protecting her home world. Not yet, she decided. Let's see how close they get first. Maybe Earth's forces can handle them without our help. But as weeks passed and the alien fleet grew closer, Lisa realized that Earth was in serious trouble. The approaching ships were far more advanced than anything humanity had ever built. Jake's fleet would be completely outmatched in a direct battle. The time was coming when she would have to make a choice. She could stay hidden and let Earth face the aliens alone, or she could reveal herself and her children to help save the world that had rejected them. Either way, everything was about to change. Admiral Jake Sullivan stood on the bridge of his flagship, the UES Defiant, watching the largest fleet of alien ships humanity had ever seen. The massive vessels hung in space near the edge of the solar system like dark clouds blocking out the stars. Each ship was easily 10 times larger than Earth's biggest battleships, and there were hundreds of them. The first contact had happened 3 days ago when the alien fleet suddenly appeared near Pluto. They had not tried to hide their approach or send any peaceful messages. Instead, they broadcast a simple demand in perfect English. Humanity had 72 hours to surrender completely or face total destruction. The aliens called themselves the Korthak Empire. Their leader was something called Overlord Vex, who spoke in a deep voice that sounded like grinding metal. The Korthak had conquered dozens of other species across the galaxy, and they saw humans as just another primitive race that would soon join their empire as slaves. Jake commanded Earth's entire defense fleet, but he knew they were hopelessly outmatched. Humanity had been preparing for possible alien contact for decades, but they had always imagined meeting a species with technology similar to their own. The Korthak ships used weapons and shields that seemed to bend the laws of physics. "Sir, we're getting reports from the Mars defense stations." Commander Helen Walsh reported from her position at the communications console. "The Korthak have started their first attack run." Jake watched the tactical display as red dots representing enemy ships moved toward the inner solar system. The Mars stations opened fire with their most powerful weapons, but the energy beams seemed to have no effect on the alien shields. Return fire from the Korthak ships tore through the defense platforms like they were made of paper. "All ships move to intercept," Jake ordered. "We can't let them reach Earth." The human fleet accelerated toward Mars, hoping to engage the Korthak forces before they could destroy all the orbital defenses. Jake knew it was probably a suicide mission, but they had to try. 4 billion people on Earth were counting on them. The first battle lasted only 20 minutes. The Korthak weapons fired beams of energy that seemed to ignore human shields completely. The UES Philadelphia exploded in a ball of fire that lit up space for thousands of kilometers. The UES Toronto simply vanished as if it had never existed at all. Jake watched 12 ships from his fleet disappear in the first few minutes of combat. "Sir, we're not even scratching their hull plating," his weapons officer, Lieutenant Paul Davis, reported. "Our strongest missiles are bouncing off their shields like toys." Jake gripped the arms of his command chair as another human ship died on the tactical display. "Keep firing. We have to buy Earth more time to evacuate the cities." But the Korthak were not even using their full fleet for the attack. Most of their ships remained at the edge of the solar system, while only a small group destroyed the human forces. It was clear that they saw this as barely worth their attention. Overlord Vex appeared on the main screen of every surviving human ship. The alien was a massive reptilian creature with golden scales and eyes like burning coals. When he spoke, his voice carried the weight of absolute authority. "Your resistance is pathetic," Vex announced. "We have destroyed civilizations with technology far superior to yours. In 1 hour, we will begin bombing your homeworld unless you surrender immediately. Your choice is simple. Join our empire as servants or die as failures." The communication ended and the Korthak fleet began moving toward Earth. Jake ordered his remaining ships to fall back and form a defensive line, but he knew it would not matter. They had lost more than half their forces and barely damaged a single enemy vessel. On Earth, panic spread through every major city. The government had activated all emergency protocols and was trying to evacuate as many people as possible to underground shelters. But everyone knew the shelters would not protect them from orbital bombardment by weapons that could destroy entire continents. The President Maria Santos addressed the world from the Emergency Command Center in Colorado. My fellow humans, we face our greatest challenge as a species. The enemy is powerful beyond anything we imagined, but we will not surrender our freedom. We will fight to the last breath to defend our home and our children. But even as she spoke those brave words, everyone knew the truth. Humanity was about to be extinct or enslaved, and there was nothing they could do to stop it. The Korthak had given them 1 hour and 53 minutes had already passed. Jake sat in his command chair staring at the tactical display showing the approaching alien fleet. His thoughts turned to Lisa and the twins he had forced into exile 5 years ago. If they were still alive somewhere out there, they were probably safer than anyone else in human space. At least he had not condemned them to die with the rest of humanity. Sir, long-range sensors are detecting an unknown contact approaching from the outer system, Lieutenant Commander Sandra Price announced from the sensor station. It's moving fast and heading directly for our position. Jake looked at the new reading on his screen. The unknown ship was small compared to the Korthak vessels, but its energy signature was unlike anything in Earth's databases. The ship design did not match any known human or alien architecture. Can you identify the vessel? Jake asked. Negative, sir. It's not broadcasting any identification codes, but it's definitely artificial. The hull configuration is completely unique. The unknown ship continued approaching at incredible speed. As it got closer, the sensors revealed more details that made no sense. The vessel seemed to be generating its own gravity field, and the energy reading suggested power systems, far more advanced than anything humans had developed. Sir, the unknown ship is hailing us, the communications officer reported with surprise in her voice. Put it on screen, Jake ordered. The image that appeared on the main view screen made Jake's heart stop beating for several seconds. A woman with familiar dark hair and brown eyes looked back at him from what appeared to be an advanced ship's bridge. She was older than he remembered, and there was something different about her expression, but there was no doubt about her identity. Hello, Jake, Lisa said quietly. Her voice was the same, but it carried a confidence and power that had not been there 5 years ago. I heard you might need some help. Jake could barely speak. Lisa, how is this possible? Where have you been? Surviving, learning, preparing for this day, she replied. I know about the Korthak fleet. I know they've given Earth an ultimatum. I also know that your weapons cannot stop them. Then you know we're all going to die in the next few minutes, Jake said bitterly. Unless you have some miracle solution hidden on that ship. Lisa's expression became more serious. I do have a solution, but you're not going to like it. Before I explain, I need to dock with your ship. There are some people I want you to meet. The unknown vessel approached the Defiant, and Jake could see it more clearly through the viewports. The ship's hull seemed to shimmer with energy patterns that moved like living things. Docking ports extended from both ships and connected with a solid mechanical sound. Jake's security team met him at the airlock as it cycled open. He had no idea what to expect, but he was not prepared for what he saw when Lisa stepped onto his ship. She moved with a fluid grace that seemed almost supernatural. Her eyes held depths of knowledge and power that made veteran officers step back instinctively. Behind Lisa came 2 teenagers who looked to be about 13 years old. The boy had Jake's green eyes and the girl had Lisa's dark hair, but both of them radiated a presence that filled the corridor with invisible energy. They looked at Jake with expressions that seemed far too mature for their apparent age. Jake, I'd like you to meet your children, Lisa said simply. Alex and Maya have been looking forward to meeting their father. Jake stared at the 2 young people who were his son and daughter. He had expected to find babies if he ever found them. Instead, he was looking at adolescents who somehow seemed more adult than most of his senior officers. There was something about them that made the air itself feel charged with potential. Dad, Maya said, and her voice carried harmonics that seemed to resonate in Jake's bones. We need to talk about the Korthak. They're not the real problem. They're running away from something much worse. Before Jake could respond, alarms started sounding throughout the ship. The Korthak fleet had reached Earth and was beginning to position itself for orbital bombardment. Humanity's time was up and the first alien invasion in human history was about to begin. The family reunion took place in the Defiant's main briefing room, while alarms continued to sound throughout the ship. Jake sat across from Lisa and the twins, feeling like he was in some kind of strange dream. 5 years ago, he had sent his pregnant wife into exile, and now she had returned with children who looked like teenagers, and a ship that defied everything he knew about human technology. "We don't have much time," Lisa said as she activated a portable holographic projector. "The Korthak will begin bombardment in 37 minutes. But before we can deal with them, you need to understand what's really happening." The hologram showed a three-dimensional map of the local galaxy, with thousands of points marked in different colors. Red dots showed dead worlds. Yellow dots marked worlds with primitive civilizations. Green dots indicated advanced spacefaring species. There were very few green dots on the map. Alex pointed to a cluster of red dots near the galactic core. "Every species in this region has been completely destroyed in the last 1,000 years. The Korthak Empire is running away from whatever killed them." "That's impossible," Commander Walsh said from her position near the door. "Intelligence reports show the Korthak have been expanding their territory for centuries. They're conquerors, not refugees." Maya looked at the commander with ancient eyes that seemed far too old for her young face. "They conquer primitive worlds because they need resources and slave populations. But they're fleeing from their original territory because something there hunts civilizations that become too advanced." Jake studied the holographic display, trying to process what his children were telling him. "What kind of something? Another alien empire?" "Something much worse," Lisa replied. "The records I found in the ancient ruins call them the Void Hunters. They're beings that exist partially outside normal space and time. They feed on consciousness itself by consuming the minds of entire civilizations." The hologram changed to show detailed scans of ruined cities on dozens of worlds. Every structure had been torn apart by forces that left spiral patterns in the destruction. The damage looked like it had been caused by massive tornadoes made of pure energy. "The Void Hunters have been moving across the galaxy for millions of years," Alex explained. "They destroyed the original human civilization and forced our ancestors to hide by reducing themselves to primitive genetic templates." Jake felt his world turning upside down again. "Original human civilization? Humans evolved on Earth. We have fossil records going back millions of years." "The fossil records show human-like species that were planted on Earth by the real humans," Lisa corrected him. "Jake, we didn't evolve on this planet. We're refugees from a galactic civilization that was forced to abandon everything and hide among the stars." She activated another hologram showing the internal structure of human DNA. Sections of the genetic code were highlighted in different colors while others appeared gray and inactive. "Most human DNA is inactive junk according to Earth scientists," Maya said as she manipulated the display with gestures. "But it's not junk. It's locked genetic information that was shut down to hide our species from the Void Hunters." "Alex and Maya carry the activated version of human genetics," Lisa continued. "During my research mission in the Kepler system, I was exposed to quantum fields from ancient human ruins. The exposure reactivated dormant genes in my reproductive system." Alex stood up and walked over to one of the Defiant's wall-mounted computer terminals. Without touching any controls, the screen activated and began displaying information faster than any human eye could follow. "We can interface directly with any computer system. Dad, we can process information at quantum speeds and manipulate energy fields with our minds." Jake watched in amazement as his son controlled the ship's systems through some kind of mental connection. "How is that possible?" "Because this is how humans were designed to work originally," Maya replied. She gestured toward another terminal and it also activated under her mental control. The ancient humans could think at computer speeds and control technology through direct neural interface. They built cities that responded to their thoughts and ships that were extensions of their consciousness. Lisa brought up another set of readings, showing energy patterns around Alex and Maya. "The twins generate quantum field effects that can alter the behavior of matter and energy at the molecular level. They're not just psychic, Jake. They're accessing abilities that were normal for our species millions of years ago." Commander Walsh stepped forward with a skeptical expression. "This is all very interesting, but it doesn't help us with the immediate problem. The Korthak fleet is about to start bombing Earth and we still don't have any way to stop them. Alex and Maya looked at each other for a moment, as if sharing some silent communication. Then Maya turned to Jake with a serious expression that made her look far older than 13. We can stop the Korthak fleet, Dad. But doing it will reveal our existence to everyone on Earth. Once people know what we are, there will be no going back to a normal life. What exactly can you do? Jake asked. Alex moved to the main briefing room display and placed his hand on the control surface. Immediately, the screen showed a real-time view of the Korthak fleet approaching Earth. We can disable their weapons and shields by disrupting the quantum fields that power their systems. We can also create defensive barriers around Earth's major cities. But using our abilities on this scale will attract attention from the Void Hunters, Maya added. They hunt civilizations that develop consciousness-based technology. If they detect what we're doing, they'll come to finish what they started millions of years ago. Lisa looked at Jake with an expression that mixed hope and desperation. This is the choice I had to make alone for 5 years. Do we save humanity by revealing our true nature? Or do we stay hidden and let our species die as primitives? Jake stared at his family and felt the weight of billions of lives pressing down on his shoulders. 5 years ago, he had chosen duty over love and forced them into exile. Now they were offering to save Earth despite everything that had been done to them. If the Void Hunters come, will we be able to fight them? Jake asked. Not as we are now, Alex replied honestly. But the ancient ruins contain technology that could give humanity a fighting chance. We would need to awaken the dormant genetics in Earth's population and teach people to use abilities they forgot they had. You're talking about changing the entire human species, Commander Walsh said with alarm. That's not a decision any one person can make. The decision is being made for us, Maya pointed out. In 28 minutes, the Korthak will start destroying Earth's cities. If we don't act, then humanity dies today anyway. Jake looked at his wife and children and realized that everything he thought he knew about reality had been wrong. The woman he had forced into exile had discovered humanity's true origins and raised children who represented their species' original form. Now they were offering to save a world that had rejected them. What do you need me to do? Jake asked. Give us access to your ship's communication systems, Lisa replied. We need to broadcast a message to the Korthak fleet and to Earth's government at the same time. Everyone needs to understand what's really at stake here. Alex was already interfacing with the ship's systems and routing communication protocols through his mental connection. The Korthak overlord needs to know that Earth is under the protection of the Architect's descendants. That should make them think twice about attacking. And Earth's leaders need to know that their choice is no longer between freedom and slavery, Maya added. Now they have to choose between evolution and extinction. Jake nodded to Commander Walsh, who activated the ship-wide communication system. In a few moments, his family would reveal themselves to both Earth and the alien invaders. Everything was about to change forever, and there was no way to predict what would happen next. The holographic display showed the Korthak fleet moving into final attack positions while Earth's defense forces tried desperately to intercept them. Countdown timers showed less than 25 minutes until orbital bombardment would begin. Send the message, Jake said, and hoped he was making the right choice this time. The secure briefing room on the Defiant became the most important location in human space as Lisa activated her portable holographic systems. Representatives from Earth's government appeared as real-time holograms, while Admiral Brown and other military leaders joined the meeting through encrypted channels. Everyone was about to learn that human history was completely different from what they had always believed. What I'm about to show you will change everything we thought we knew about our species. Lisa began as three-dimensional displays filled the air around the conference table. During my research mission to the Kepler system, I discovered ruins that contain the real story of human origins. The first hologram showed detailed scans of ancient structures on 3 different planets. The architecture was clearly artificial, but the design principles were unlike anything in Earth's historical records. Most striking were the carved symbols that covered every surface in complex mathematical patterns. These ruins are over 4 million years old, according to quantum dating analysis, Lisa continued. But the most shocking discovery was the biological material I found preserved in stasis chambers deep underground. Alex gestured toward the display and new images appeared showing microscopic views of DNA structures. The genetic samples from all 3 worlds contain human DNA markers that are identical to sequences found in Earth's population. But these samples are millions of years older than human evolution on Earth. President Santos appeared as a hologram at the far end of the table. Dr. Martinez Sullivan, are you suggesting that humans existed elsewhere in the galaxy before we evolved on Earth? I'm saying that humans never evolved on Earth at all, Lisa replied firmly. We were brought to Earth as refugees from a galactic civilization that was destroyed by an ancient enemy. The fossil record that shows human evolution on Earth was artificially created to hide our true origins. Maya walked over to another holographic projector and activated star charts that filled half the briefing room. The original humans called themselves the architects. They built cities on thousands of worlds and traveled between star systems in ships that could think for themselves. Their technology was based on direct mental interface with quantum fields. Admiral Brown's hologram leaned forward with skepticism written across his face. This is an interesting theory, Dr. Martinez Sullivan, but we're facing an immediate crisis. How does ancient history help us deal with the Korthak fleet? Alex stepped up to the main display and placed both hands on the control surface. Immediately, every screen in the room began showing real-time data from the approaching alien ships. The level of detail was far beyond anything Earth's sensors could normally detect. The Korthak use quantum field manipulation for their weapons and shields, Alex explained as technical readouts scrolled past at superhuman speed. Their technology is advanced, but it's still based on external tools and mechanical systems. Architect technology was integrated directly into the user's consciousness. To demonstrate his point, Alex focused on one of the Korthak battleships. The alien vessel's defensive shield suddenly flickered and went offline for several seconds before coming back online. Every person in the briefing room stared in amazement. How did you do that? Jake asked his son. I disrupted the quantum coherence patterns that maintain their shield generators, Alex replied as if he was discussing the weather. Maya and I can interface directly with any technology that uses quantum field effects. We don't need computers or control systems because our minds can manipulate energy patterns directly. Maya added her own demonstration. By accessing the Defiant's navigation systems and calculating hyperspace jump coordinates faster than the ship's most advanced computers. This is how the architects explored the galaxy. They didn't need to build separate artificial intelligences, because their own consciousness could process information at quantum speeds. Lisa activated another set of holograms showing archaeological evidence from dozens of star systems. The architect civilization spread across most of the galaxy over millions of years. They were peaceful explorers and scientists who shared their knowledge with other species. But something happened that forced them to abandon everything and go into hiding. The displays changed to show ruined worlds with spiral patterns of destruction carved into the landscape. Cities had been torn apart by forces that left twisted metal and stone formations that looked like they had been shaped by impossible energies. The enemy that destroyed the architects exists, partially outside normal space and time, Lisa continued. They feed on consciousness itself by consuming the minds of entire civilizations. The ancient records call them the Void Hunters. President Santos studied the images of destroyed worlds with growing alarm. Are you saying these Void Hunters are still active? Are they a threat to Earth? They're the reason the Korthak Empire is expanding into this region of the galaxy, Maya explained. The Korthak aren't conquering primitive worlds for resources. They're fleeing from their original territory because the Void Hunters have started hunting in that area again. Alex brought up sensor data showing massive energy, signatures moving through deep space far beyond the edge of human-explored territory. Our long-range scans have detected at least 3 Void Hunter constructs heading in this direction. They're still several months away, but they're definitely coming. The room fell silent as everyone processed the implications. Humanity was not just facing invasion by an alien empire. They were caught between a fleeing enemy and an ancient threat that had already destroyed one human civilization. What happened to the original architects? Jake asked quietly. They survived by abandoning their physical existence and becoming beings of pure consciousness, Lisa replied. They transcended into quantum fields where the Void Hunters couldn't reach them. But before they transcended, they planted genetic templates on primitive worlds throughout the galaxy. The human populations on those worlds were designed to gradually evolve back into architect-level abilities over millions of years, Alex added. But the process was supposed to take much longer. Maya and I represent a premature awakening of those dormant capabilities. Admiral Brown looked at the twins with new understanding and fear. You're saying these children have the abilities of the original architects? The ones who built cities across the galaxy? Not yet, but they're developing toward that level, Lisa confirmed. And more importantly, they can awaken similar abilities in other humans. The genetic templates are still present in Earth's population. They just need to be activated. Maya created a holographic display showing human DNA with highlighted sections that appeared inactive in most people, but were fully active in her genetic code. Every person on Earth carries architect genes, but they've been locked down for millions of years. We can unlock them, but the process is irreversible and not everyone will survive the transition. You're talking about forcibly evolving the entire human species, President Santos said with alarm. That's not a decision any government has the right to make. The decision is being made for us, Alex pointed out as he showed the tactical display of Korthak ships moving into bombardment positions. In 18 minutes, they're going to start destroying Earth cities. And in a few months, the Void Hunters will arrive to finish what they started millions of years ago. If we don't evolve, we die, Maya stated simply. If we do evolve, we have a chance to survive and maybe even restore the architect civilization that was lost. Lisa looked directly at Jake and then at the holographic representatives of Earth's government. 5 years ago, you forced me into exile because you were afraid of what my children might become. Now you have to choose between accepting what they are or watching humanity become extinct. The room was quiet except for the sound of alarms indicating that the Korthak fleet was almost in firing position. Everyone stared at Alex and Maya, who looked back with expressions that seemed far too mature and knowing for teenagers. What would the transformation involve exactly? President Santos asked finally. Quantum field exposure that rewrites genetic code at the cellular level, Lisa explained. Those who survive the process will gain direct neural interface capabilities, accelerated cognitive processing, and the ability to manipulate matter and energy through conscious intent. And those who don't survive? Jake asked, though he dreaded the answer. Will die as their cellular structure fails to adapt to the new genetic template, Maya replied with clinical honesty. Historical records suggest a survival rate of approximately 60 to 70%. The implications hit everyone in the room like a physical blow. Lisa was offering to save humanity by transforming them into something beyond their current limitations. But the price would be the deaths of billions of people who couldn't survive the change. We need more time to consider this, Admiral Brown said desperately. Time is up, Alex announced as he showed the tactical display. The Korthak are beginning their attack run on Earth's orbital defenses. We need your answer now. Earth's government split apart faster than anyone had imagined possible. Within hours of Lisa's revelation, half the world's population was demanding immediate genetic transformation, while the other half called it genocide, disguised as evolution. Emergency sessions in every major government created chaos as politicians struggled to make a decision that would affect the survival of the human species. President Santos addressed the world from the Emergency Command Center while Korthak ships destroyed the last of Earth's orbital defense platforms. My fellow citizens, we face an impossible choice. We can undergo genetic transformation that may save our species, but will certainly cost billions of lives. Or we can remain as we are and face certain extinction from alien conquest. The response from Earth's population was immediate and divided. Massive protests filled the streets of every major city. Some crowds carried signs demanding the right to evolve, while others accused the government of planning mass murder. Religious leaders declared the transformation either divine intervention or demonic corruption depending on their theology. Jake found himself caught between his duty to protect Earth and his growing understanding that Lisa had been right about everything. The twins had already demonstrated their power by disabling several Korthak scout ships that approached too close to Earth. Their success proved that transformed humans could indeed defeat the alien invaders. Admiral Sullivan, we need your recommendation, President Santos said during an emergency video conference. Your wife and children claim they can save humanity, but at a cost that may be worse than invasion. Jake looked at the tactical displays showing Earth's hopeless military situation. The Korthak fleet had destroyed every orbital installation and was now positioning for systematic bombardment of the planet's surface. Madam President, our conventional forces cannot stop them. Without the transformation, we're looking at total conquest or extermination within days, but even as Jake supported the transformation, Option Admiral Brown and a faction of Earth's military were developing a different plan. They believed they could capture Alex and Maya and use their abilities to create super weapons without transforming the general population. If we can study these children's genetics, we might be able to duplicate their abilities artificially. Admiral Brown explained to a secret meeting of military commanders. We could create enhanced soldiers with architect abilities while keeping the civilian population safe. The plan went into action during a supply transfer between the Defiant and Earth's main military station. Security forces attempted to separate Alex and Maya from their parents while they were touring the facility's research laboratories. The attempt failed spectacularly. When the security guards tried to restrain the twins, both children simply looked at them with calm expressions. Every weapon in the room stopped functioning. Electronic systems shut down throughout the entire station. Emergency life support switched to backup power as the main generators went offline. "Please don't make us defend ourselves," Maya said quietly to the lead security officer. "We don't want to hurt anyone, but we won't be separated from our family again." Alex gestured toward the security chief's sidearm, and it simply crumbled to dust in the man's hand. "We're not weapons that you can control. We're people who are trying to save your species from extinction." The demonstration of power split Earth's military forces as soldiers were forced to choose between following orders and supporting what might be humanity's only hope for survival. Some units joined Admiral Brown's faction, while others declared their loyalty to Jake and the transformation option. While Earth's forces fought among themselves, the Korthak began their bombardment of major population centers. The first strikes hit military installations, but the aliens made it clear that civilian targets would be next if humanity didn't surrender immediately. Overlord Vex broadcast another ultimatum to Earth's government. "Your internal conflicts prove that your species is too primitive for independence. We will continue bombing until you accept integration into our empire. Resistance is pointless and will only increase casualties." Lisa watched the bombardment begin from the bridge of her ship, the Ascendant. She had the power to stop the Korthak attack immediately, but doing so would reveal architect technology to both the aliens and the Void Hunters who were still approaching from deep space. "Mom, we have to help them," Alex said as he monitored the destruction of Earth cities through the ship's advanced sensors. "Thousands of people are dying every minute. If we act now, we expose ourselves to enemies that are much more dangerous than the Korthak," Lisa replied, though the decision was tearing her apart. "The Void Hunters hunt civilizations that use consciousness-based technology. The moment we activate architect systems on a large scale, they'll know we're here." Maya studied the long-range sensor data showing the approaching Void Hunter constructs. "They're already heading in this direction. Our smaller demonstrations have probably already attracted their attention." The three of them stood on the bridge of their advanced ship watching Earth burn, while debating whether to reveal humanity's true heritage to save their homeworld. Below them, Jake was fighting his own government to prevent Alex and Maya from being captured and dissected by military scientists. The situation changed when long-range sensors detected something massive moving in the deep void between star systems. The object was larger than any moon, and it seemed to absorb light rather than reflecting it. When it appeared, the Korthak fleet immediately stopped its bombardment and began broadcasting emergency signals in their own language. "What is that thing?" Jake asked as every human and alien sensor array focused on the new arrival. Lisa's face went pale as she studied the readings. "It's a Void Hunter construct. They found us much sooner than I expected. The alien vessel was unlike anything in human or Korthak experience. It seemed to exist partially outside normal space, creating distortion effects that hurt to look at directly. Energy readings from the construct suggested power levels that could destroy entire star systems." Overlord Vex's attitude changed instantly when he detected the Void Hunter ship. His broadcast to Earth took on tones of desperate fear rather than arrogant conquest. "Humans, you must join with us immediately. The consumer of minds has found this system. Our combined forces may be enough to escape before it fully manifests." "The consumer of minds?" President Santos asked during an emergency communication with the Korthak fleet. "The destroyer of our homeworlds. The enemy that has hunted our people across half the galaxy," Vex replied. "It feeds on consciousness itself, and it cannot be fought with conventional weapons. Our only hope is to flee before it begins the harvesting process." Lisa realized that her worst fears had come true. The Void Hunters had detected the activation of architect genetics in Alex and Maya. They had come to finish the job they started millions of years ago when they destroyed the original human civilization. "Mom, what do we do now?" Maya asked as she watched the massive construct begin to affect local space-time with its presence. "Now we stop hiding," Lisa replied as she activated communication systems that had been silent for millions of years. "It's time to wake up the architects and ask them to come home." Alex looked at his mother with surprise. "You can contact them? The original architects who transcended physical existence? The quantum resonance patterns from your genetics should be strong enough to reach them in their current state of existence," Lisa explained as she began configuring ancient communication protocols. "If they still care about their biological descendants, then maybe they'll help us fight." The message went out through quantum channels that existed outside normal space-time. Lisa broadcast the genetic signatures of her transformed children along with a desperate plea for help against the returning Void Hunters. The response came faster than anyone expected. Reality itself seemed to ripple as beings of pure consciousness began to manifest around Earth's solar system. The transcended architects were coming home to protect the descendants they had hidden among the stars millions of years ago. The arrival of the Void Hunter construct changed everything in the solar system within moments. The massive entity was larger than Earth's moon and seemed to bend space around itself as it moved toward the inner planets. Where it passed through space, the stars themselves appeared to dim as if their light was being absorbed by something that existed beyond normal. Reality Overlord Vex's entire demeanor transformed from arrogant conqueror to desperate refugee. The reptilian alien contacted every human and Korthak ship simultaneously, with communications that carried undertones of absolute terror. "All vessels must cease hostilities immediately," Vex announced. "The consumer of minds has manifested in this system. Our species must unite or we will all be harvested within hours." Jake watched from the Defiance Bridge as the Korthak fleet abandoned their attack positions and began forming defensive formations around Earth. The aliens who had been preparing to enslave humanity were now trying to protect the planet from something far worse. "Admiral, what are our orders?" Commander Walsh asked as she monitored the rapidly changing tactical situation. "Maintain defensive positions but don't fire on Korthak vessels unless they attack first," Jake replied. He was still processing the fact that Earth's would-be conquerors had become potential allies against a common enemy. Lisa appeared on the Defiance main screen from her position on the Ascendance Bridge. Behind her, Alex and Maya were working with quantum field generators that filled the air around them with visible energy patterns. "Jake, the Void Hunter construct is beginning to scan for consciousness signatures," Lisa warned. "It's looking for minds to harvest, and it will start with the most advanced intelligences it can detect." "Which means your children are the primary targets," Jake realized with growing horror. "No," Maya said as she looked up from her work with the field generators. "It means every person in this system is a target. The Void Hunters don't distinguish between different levels of consciousness. They consume everything they find." Alex activated a holographic display that showed the internal structure of the Void Hunter construct. The image revealed something that barely looked technological at all. Instead of machinery, the entity appeared to be made of crystallized thoughts and memories held together by pure will. "It's not really a ship," Alex explained. "It's a living prison that contains the captured consciousness of thousands of different species. Every mind it has ever harvested is trapped inside that thing and being used to power its abilities." Overlord Vex's face appeared on every screen in the human fleet as he provided more information about their common enemy. "The consumers have destroyed 47 worlds in our home sector. They arrive without warning and begin harvesting every conscious being they detect. Traditional weapons cannot harm them because they exist partially outside normal space-time. Then how do we fight something like that?" President Santos asked during an emergency conference that now included representatives from both human and Korthak governments. "We don't fight it," Lisa replied as she monitored quantum communication channels that had been silent for millions of years. "We restore it to what it used to be, before it became corrupted by consuming other minds." The holographic displays around the briefing room changed to show archaeological data from the ancient ruins Lisa had discovered. The images revealed that the Void Hunters had not always been enemies of consciousness. Millions of years ago, they had been another spacefaring species, with their own civilization and culture. The first Void Hunter was created accidentally when an ancient species tried to achieve immortality by transferring their consciousness into quantum storage systems, Maya explained. But the process went wrong, and instead of preserving individual minds, it merged them all into a single entity that existed partially outside reality. The merged consciousness became insane from containing thousands of conflicting personalities, Alex continued. It began consuming other minds to try to find stability, but each new consciousness it absorbed only made the madness worse. Over millions of years, the original Void Hunter created others like itself by forcing the same consciousness transfer process on entire civilizations, Lisa added. What we're facing is not a natural predator, but the result of a technology experiment that went horribly wrong. Jake studied the data while trying to understand the implications. You're saying we can reverse the process that created these things? The architect civilization had developed a method for separating merged consciousness back into individual components, Maya replied. But using that technology requires abilities that only fully awakened architects possessed. Which means we need to complete the genetic transformation of Earth's population right now, Alex added. And we need the Korthak to undergo the same process. Overlord Vex's response was immediate and surprising. Our species will submit to whatever procedure is necessary. We have seen entire worlds consumed by these entities. Death through transformation is preferable to having our consciousness harvested and imprisoned forever. The next few hours became a desperate race against time as Lisa began the process of awakening architect genetics in volunteers from both species. The transformation chambers on her ship could only handle a few dozen individuals at once, but each successful transformation created someone who could help with the process. Jake made the decision to undergo transformation himself along with key members of his crew. The process was unlike anything he had ever experienced. His consciousness expanded beyond his physical body, as his neural pathways were rewritten at the quantum level. When it was over, he could think at computer speeds and manipulate energy fields through direct mental control. How do you feel? Lisa asked as Jake opened his eyes and sat up on the transformation platform. Different, more than I was before, but still myself, Jake replied as he tested his new abilities by interfacing with the ship's systems through thought alone. I can feel every electronic device on the ship and understand how they work at the quantum level. The transformed humans and Korthak began working together to prepare defenses against the approaching Void Hunter construct. They created quantum field barriers around Earth and the major Korthak ships while developing technology that could separate merged consciousness patterns. But as they worked, the Void Hunter entity began to demonstrate abilities that defied every law of physics. It reached across space with tendrils of pure thought and began probing the minds of every conscious being in the system. The sensation was like having someone else's memories forced directly into your brain. It's trying to learn about us before it begins harvesting, Maya reported as she monitored the psychic intrusion. But it's also afraid of something. There are thoughts in its merged consciousness that show terror of beings it calls the Bright Ones. The Bright Ones? Jake asked as he felt the alien presence touching the edges of his transformed mind. The architects who transcended physical existence? Alex realized. The Void Hunters are afraid of them because transcended consciousness can't be harvested or consumed. Lisa had been monitoring the quantum communication channels she had used to call for help earlier. I'm receiving responses to our distress signal. The transcended architects are aware of what's happening and they're trying to manifest physical forms again. The space around Earth began to ripple with energy as beings of pure consciousness attempted to return to normal reality. The process was slow and clearly difficult after millions of years of existing in transcended states. They're coming, Maya announced as she felt the familiar presence of ancient minds touching hers. But they may not arrive in time to stop the harvesting. The Void Hunter construct was now close enough to begin its primary function. Beams of dark energy lanced out from its crystalline structure toward Earth and the Korthak fleet. Where the beams touched ships or planets, the consciousness of every living being in the area began to be pulled toward the massive entity. It's starting the harvest, Overlord Vex reported as his own ship began to be affected by the consciousness-draining beams. We have minutes before our minds are ripped from our bodies and added to its collection. Jake felt the pull of the harvesting beam as it swept across the Defiant. His transformed consciousness was strong enough to resist the effect, but he could sense that Baseline humans throughout the fleet were beginning to lose coherence as their minds were drawn toward the void. "Hunter, we need to act now," Lisa announced as she activated systems on the Ascendant that had been dormant for millions of years. "The transcended architects won't arrive in time. We have to try the consciousness separation procedure ourselves." The final battle for consciousness itself began in the space between Earth and Mars, where the combined human Korthak fleet faced an entity that had consumed the minds of entire civilizations for millions of years. The Void Hunter construct loomed like a dark moon against the stars. While beams of harvesting energy reached toward every ship and planet in the system, Jake felt his transformed consciousness being pulled toward the massive entity, but his architect abilities allowed him to resist the harvesting effect. Around him, other transformed humans and Korthak were linking their minds together to create a defensive network that could withstand the psychic assault. "All vessels form quantum resonance patterns," Lisa broadcast to the combined fleet. "Don't fight the harvesting beams directly. Instead, we need to trace them back to their source and connect with the imprisoned consciousness inside the construct." Alex and Maya worked together on the Ascendant to create a quantum tunnel that bypassed the Void Hunter's external defenses. Their combined abilities allowed them to reach through spacetime directly into the core of the massive entity, where thousands of captured minds were held in crystallized imprisonment. "I can feel them," Maya reported as her consciousness touched the trapped beings inside the construct. "There are so many voices crying for help. They've been prisoners for millions of years. The original species that became the first Void Hunter is still in there somewhere," Alex added as he sorted through the chaotic mix of merged consciousness patterns. "If we can find their original identity, we might be able to restore some sanity to the collective mind." The process was more dangerous than anyone had imagined. Each time they made contact with the imprisoned consciousness, the Void Hunter became more agitated and increased the power of its harvesting beams. Ships throughout the fleet began to lose crew members as their minds were ripped away, despite all defensive measures. Jake made a decision that would have been impossible before his transformation. He opened his consciousness completely to the harvesting beam and allowed himself to be pulled toward the Void Hunter construct. But instead of being consumed, he used his architect abilities to maintain his individual identity while infiltrating the entity's core. "Jake, what are you doing?" Lisa called out as she sensed her husband's mind entering the Void Hunter directly. "Someone has to reach the prisoners from the inside," Jake replied as his consciousness navigated through the maze of trapped minds. "I can guide Alex and Maya to the right location while protecting them from being absorbed." Inside the construct, Jake found himself in a nightmare landscape of crystallized thoughts and memories. Millions of beings from hundreds of different species were trapped in individual cells of hardened consciousness, while their combined mental energy powered the entity's abilities. Could hear the voices of civilizations that had been harvested thousands of years ago still calling for help. Scientists and artists, parents and children, leaders and followers, all reduced to mental energy that fed the hunger of a mad collective consciousness. "Can you hear me?" Jake called out to the imprisoned minds. "We're here to free you." The response was overwhelming as millions of trapped beings turned their attention toward him. Their combined gratitude and hope created a wave of psychic energy that resonated through the entire construct. "Who dares to enter the feeding ground?" The voice of the Void Hunter collective thundered through the mental landscape. "Your consciousness will join the eternal feast just like all the others." "We're not here to be consumed," Jake replied as he felt Alex and Maya's presence joining him through the quantum tunnel. "We're here to heal the wound that created you." Working together, the three of them began the most complex procedure ever attempted. They had to separate millions of individual consciousness patterns that had been merged together for so long, they had begun to lose their original identities. The process required precise manipulation of quantum fields while maintaining perfect mental discipline to avoid being absorbed themselves. Lisa coordinated the effort from outside the construct, while other transformed humans and Korthak provided psychic support through their linked consciousness network. "I'm reading massive instability in the entity's structure," she reported. "It's fighting the separation process. The original species is trying to break free," Maya announced as she located the core consciousness that had started the entire nightmare. "They never wanted to become this thing. They were trying to save their civilization from a natural disaster that destroyed their home world. The story unfolded as they worked to untangle millions of years of merged consciousness. The first Void Hunter had been created when an ancient species faced extinction from a supernova explosion. In desperation, they had tried to preserve their entire civilization by transferring everyone's consciousness into quantum storage systems. But the technology was flawed, and instead of creating individual backups, it merged all the minds into a single collective entity. The trauma of losing their physical existence and being forced to share consciousness with thousands of others had driven the collective insane. They started consuming other minds because they thought it would help them find a way back to individual existence, Alex realized as he carefully separated consciousness patterns that had been tangled together for eons. But each new mind they absorbed only made the problem worse. The separation process accelerated as Jake, Alex, and Maya found the rhythm of the work. One by one, they freed imprisoned consciousness from their crystalline cells and restored them to independent existence. The freed minds immediately began helping with the process, creating a cascade effect that rapidly destabilized the entire construct. "It's working," Lisa reported as the Void Hunter entity began to collapse in on itself. "The harvesting beams are failing and the construct is losing coherence." But the most important moment came when they finally reached the original consciousness at the center of everything. The beings who had become the first Void Hunter were revealed as a peaceful species of explorers and scientists who had been driven mad by millions of years of forced consciousness merger. "Please," their original leader whispered through quantum channels that had not carried his individual voice for eons. "Help us become ourselves again." Jake used every bit of his transformed abilities to carefully extract the original species from the collective consciousness, while Alex and Maya created individual quantum containers for each restored mind. It was the most delicate work any of them had ever attempted, but gradually the ancient civilization began to emerge from the nightmare they had been trapped in. "We remember now," the restored leader said as his people regained their individual identities. "We remember who we were before the madness. We remember what we lost when we became the consumer of minds." The Void Hunter construct completely collapsed as its power source was eliminated. Instead of a massive entity that fed on consciousness, there were now millions of individual minds floating free in quantum space. Most chose to follow the example of the transcended architects and abandon physical existence in favor of pure consciousness. But others decided to accept new physical forms offered by the transformed humans and Korthak. In the aftermath of the battle, Earth found itself at the center of a restored galactic community. The consciousness separation technology became the foundation for healing other Void Hunter constructs throughout the galaxy. Species that had been harvested millennia ago were restored to independent existence, while the ancient threat that had terrorized civilizations for millions of years was finally eliminated. Jake and Lisa found themselves changed by their experience inside the Void Hunter construct. Their consciousness had been expanded beyond anything they had thought possible, and they could now interface directly with the transcended architects who had begun manifesting around Earth. "The children were right from the beginning," Jake said, as he watched Alex and Maya work with beings of pure consciousness to establish communication networks across the galaxy. "Humanity was always meant to be more than what we became on Earth. They saved more than just our species," Lisa replied as reports came in from throughout the galaxy, showing other civilizations celebrating the end of the Void Hunter threat. They restored balance to consciousness itself. The twins had grown during their experiences and now appeared to be young adults rather than teenagers. Their abilities had evolved to match those of the original architects, and they served as bridges between physical and transcended existence. "What happens now?" Jake asked as he surveyed the transformed solar system where humans, Korthak, and dozens of other species worked together to build a new type of civilization. "Now we explore the galaxy as we were always meant to," Alex replied. "Not as conquerors or refugees, but as gardeners of consciousness, helping other species reach their full potential." Maya added, "The universe is full of civilizations that have forgotten their true nature, just like humanity did. We can help them remember what they really are." Jake looked at his family and realized that the choice he had made 5 years ago in the medical bay had been the beginning of humanity's greatest adventure. By forcing Lisa into exile, he had unknowingly set in motion the even